What's up, good people? All right, so now that I've done the producers, I think it's now time to talk about the rappers. And yeah, man, this decade was really horrible. I mean, it was the worst decade in hip hop history, and I don't expect things to get better, but you never know. Sometimes things get a lot worse before they start to improve. But at least in the 2010s there were producers that I loved. Like, I can genuinely say that I loved Clams Casino stuff. I love Metro Boomin shit. So like, and I do think that they were doing some innovative, interesting shit. Whereas with the rappers, that's where it starts to get really iffy. Yeah. So let me out the way. All right. I'm gonna just get to the honorable mentions. I got four honorable mentions this year. Not this year, but I mean over the decade. Well, yeah, four or five. So I would say Jay. Jay still dropped some decent stuff. Yeah, he's fallen off, and it's not really hot stuff, but he still had prime time. Check that record out. That was a hot record. Gotta have it. Tom Ford, I thought was pretty decent. Even the title record 444, it was kind of spoken wordy and not really my cup of tea. But Jay has dropped some decent music, and it's interesting because I think Jay and Nas have kind of emerged as being the best rappers of all time in terms of catalog. And that's clear because these guys continue to drop music. I mean, they're fearless in that regard, that they put themselves out there. And to be honest with you, that's why they're in the conversation, man. The other day, Andre 3000 was talking about how sort of fame and, has crippled his ability to make a solo album. And with all due respect to Andre, I mean, this is why I wouldn't put Andre in the top 10 conversation because A, you don't have a solo project, but B, the goats are fearless, you know what I mean? And you have to put material out. That's just a simple truth. And who cares what people think almost. You just have to, do it in a way where people judge it, whether it's good or bad. You have to really have that heart, man. And that's what makes the GOATs. I always thought that conversation around Andre 3000 being like top 10 rapper to be flawed because I respect Andre 3000 and I think he is a dope rapper for sure. But I never thought he was a top 10 rapper. So, anyway, so those two are honorable mentions, Jay and Nas. I would throw French Montana in there, funny enough. French Montana is one of those dudes that surprised me because I thought French Montana was trash as fuck when he came out. Like, to the point where I was like, who is this vulture and why is he even here? Type of thing. And I still feel that he's like kind of a vulture, to be honest with you. I'm not sure why people gave him a pass to just enter hip hop, but again, hip hop is in this vulture stage anyway. So like, I don't understand an Arab dude getting the opportunity to just be like nigga this on record and stuff like that. It's like what? But and people say, oh, he's from New York, whatever. I get it. I live in New York. Like, I get it, but I also don't get it. So French Montana though, Lockjaw, off the rip is one of my favorite songs of this decade. Period. That's actually really when I started to like go, oh, okay, I think you're garbage, but this record is hot fire. And by the way, this kind of segues into a slight little tangent. But if you're whack, I can still like a song if it's dope. I think people sometimes get this twisted. They look at me and they diss Kendrick Lamar, who is trash, by the way, because Kendrick has never made a song as good as Off the Rip, ever. And that's the thing to me where it's like, I don't have to like you, but if you make great shit, you make one song where it all comes together, I'll still fuck with that song and I'll give you props for it. Nicki Minaj, who I don't like, made Bees in a Trap. And I remember saying back then that that was her best track, and I think it still is. So you can be whack and still make a dope record. But if you're whack and you haven't even made a dope record ever, then you're really whack. Or just really average, mediocre, whatever. Anyway, French Montana. And then Future. I would say those are kind of my four. Might throw Prodigy in there. Curb Your Dog, I think, was really dope. And The Good Fight. So, yeah, maybe. Like, I would say those are my five sort of honorable mentions across the board. I think some veterans and some of the new guys. Future Reserve the Bass, of course, and Mask Off. So those are my honorable mentions. Okay, now let's get to the real meat. The people that I thought were the dopest of this decade. Number five, 21 Savage. 21 Savage to me was unique out the gate. He was kind of doing a Lil B thing to a certain degree, like with that sort of flow. But again, you can tell when a dude is coming out the gate with some new shit. The first time I ever heard 21 Savage, I'm trying to think if I'd heard him before the Metro Boomin tape. I'd heard the name or something like that. You know, people were talking about, oh, there's this cat, 21 Savage, or whatever. But I remember checking out that tape because I was a Metro fan when it came out. And I was like, I haven't heard this guy 21 Savage. Let me just put this shit in. It's probably going to be trash, right? The first record comes up with no advance. And I'm like, like when you start bopping, like, oh. And it's rare that I do that with a new act, you know. And I can't remember, I think he was like, I'm with my chains on or whatever. Like, there's a way he just came in on no advance, and I was just like, holy shit, this is kind of hard. Like, and then went to No Hard and X, and I was just like, yo, this kid is that guy. So I like 21 Savage a lot. I think he has kind of fallen off a little bit, and I haven't really heard anything new from him that I'm really fucking with. But that 2016, 2017 days, I think he was at his peak. Unfortunately, these young rappers peak very early now. So yeah, he gets my nod for number five. And if you're looking for a track, No Advance, of course. No Heart. X is phenomenal. He has some great verses on EA, the Young Nudie record, and Drake Sneakin'. 21 Savage is that guy. Number four. This could be interchangeable with number three, but number four goes to Lil B. I think Lil B is funny as fuck, a brilliant artist, really came with some unique shit, and actually, in a lot of ways, is the reason why modern rap actually ended up being decent on any level. Because I remember the 2000s, like 2008, 2009. It was fucking horrible. It was horrible. That whole Lil Wayne, Rick Ross, that shit was straight garbage, right? Straight garbage. Mainstream rap was fucking done. Like, and even underground was trash. I mean, we had like Torre and I'm trying to remember who was underground that people were talking about. Marco Polo, a bunch of people that I just don't give a fuck about. Never did really. It was horrible. That was like a really bad sort of time. I mean, Raekwon had Cuban Links. You know what? Raekwon, honorable mention. Yeah, okay. Raekwon had Cuban Links too, which was okay for what was coming out, but that obviously doesn't stack up to the first one. But my point is, Lil B comes out with all this really interesting fucking music. I mean, the production was unreal. This guy was doing some shit and rhyming over all these different coasts and stuff. I thought Lil B was absolutely innovative, and it took me a minute. I remember the first time I heard him, and I thought he was the worst thing to fucking happen to hip hop. Like, I didn't get it at first, and then I saw Pretty Bitch, the video, and this dude's referring to himself as a bitch, and I was just like, he's trolling. He's got to be trolling. I thought it was great. I mean, it's some real funny shit, and I got it. Like, he was doing this like Prince shit, whatever. Lil B's got a ton of records. I think Bizarre Model was genius, where he took a really obscure Prince record and like Paul revered it. I mean, this guy was on some other shit, man. Like, him and his team. Like, I really got to give it to Lil B. I would put Lil B a lot higher on my list if he had sort of moved away from the trolling thing, because I do think that the trolling stuff was genius and really funny and very insightful in a lot of ways. But I think that you got to move beyond that. Like, it was a joke that I think he just ran into the floor. Like, after like 2015, and then the beats started to falter. It's just kind of like we've seen this before. So yeah, Lil B is my fourth. Open Thunder, Eternal Slumber is a phenomenal song. There's so much of Lil B. I could do a whole video on Lil B because that's like a complex thing entirely. February's Confessions, real shit from a real nigga. Like, he discovered Clams Casino. I mean, like, Lil B is that dude, man. So yeah, he's number four. Number three. goes to my man Playboi Carti. Playboi Carti has really emerged as being, like, to me, the best rapper of the last couple of years. Self-Titled was phenomenal. I think that's the second best hip hop album I've heard this entire decade. And I do think that's almost, in a way, a classic album. It's kind of close. It's teetering, whatever. There's a good 7 to 8 strong joints on that self-titled, and Die Lit was real dope too. So it wasn't as good, but it definitely had its moments. No Time is phenomenal. R.I.P. is dope. I'm struggling top. I mean, but Playboi has a style, and I like Playboi. I think he's very inventive. And again, I like people that fuck with me a little bit. When I first heard Magnolia, I was like, oh, this beat goes. I don't care for the rapping, but I knew there was something that was interesting about it. I was kind of like, this guy's going to ad-lib this entire shit? What? And again, this is the thing that I find with everyone on my list that I'm going to mention. They all got hate initially because they were doing some unique shit. And this is the problem with why you don't hear a lot of unique stuff in general. Is that the people that really take the time to be unique and do some creative, hard-hitting shit, people hate them at first. They always hate them because they don't get it. And then they start to copy them, and over time they try to ride the bandwagon, right? And it's disappointing every time to see that shit. But the point is that Playboi was unique as fuck. And I think that Playboi is phenomenal and he's doing pretty well. I mean, I'm sad to hear about all these leaks and all that, but I like Playboi a lot, man. And he's up there. I think Self-Titled is easily one of the strongest rap albums of the decade. Top 2. Number 2, Drizzy. This is a no-brainer. Drake is the smartest guy in the room. He knows what's going on. He knows how to appropriate stuff very well, but that's because he's a creative dude. And, it's interesting how people will say, oh, you don't write this, you don't write that. And I think people say that because they're jealous of him. And, he's a Canadian cat like myself. So there's hate there for sure. Do I think that Drake, obviously takes trends and sort of, moves with them? Yes, he's the great aggregator. He's a Jay-Z. Like, this is what they do. They sit there and they go, okay, this is what's popping, and or this might pop, and I'm going to sort of, aggregate it and, put it together in my own style. And there is a genius to that. There is a smart sort of thinking to that shit. I rate Drake. I think that Drake has some phenomenal hip-hop records, some smashes, obviously. And this is coming from a dude who didn't like Drake initially. I did not like when he was coming out sounding like Lil Wayne and Fonte and shit like that. That shit to me was horrible. And when he started from the bottom, that's when I started to fuck with him more. And he switched up. So I respect that 100%. Obviously, if you're looking for Drake records, Jumpman, started from the bottom. Know Yourself. Know Yourself is that shit. That's that Toronto record, man. That's one of the best joints he ever did, low key. And lastly, before my video cuts off, ASAP motherfucking Rocky, number 1. Rocky, man, has so much charisma. His flow is unreal. His voice, his charisma, his presence, his taste, like him and Yams and the crew and all the stuff that they put out. I mean, they changed this rap shit. They took these ideas that SGP and Lil B had that were kind of raw and unfinished and catapulted that shit. Facts. Like, and Rocky, who signed Playboi Carti and is kind of working with him as well and deserves some credit for that shit. Rocky is that dude, man. Rocky is that guy. I've said this before countless times. He is easily the best rapper of this decade, and in a way, it's not even close. It's funny when people kind of don't mention him, but I know that a lot of the people that don't mention him are casual, so of course, they're not going to know. Like, they're not going to understand what Rocky's doing, and that's okay. If Rocky or his people or anyone who's tied to him is watching this, like, we know. Niggas know. Like, we pay attention to shit. And Rocky is that guy. He is the dude that people copy. His style is phenomenal. Like, just the idea to come with some underground sort of southern shit and make it more, New York, but still southern and still West Coast and mix all these different coasts at one time. It's genius. I mean, Live Love ASAP is fucking genius. And again, it is a sort of polished and I would say really put together version of what Lil B was doing. It's where Lil B, I think, hopefully would have gone in a way if he wasn't so stuck on trolling. But Yams must have figured that shit out. Like, just like, yo, like, we could do all this shit and still make it us and be unique with it. So, I mean, where do you start with Rocky? Live Love ASAP. The whole entire shit. Just listen to that whole shit. Max Julian, Pretty Flacco, like just phenomenal fucking records. Lord Pretty Flacco Jr. too, or JD, Far Side. Like he's just got so many joints. So those are my rappers, man. And if you disagree, feel free. If there's someone I forgot, feel free to mention them. I don't really think I forgot anybody. I'm gonna be honest. The one cat that I feel was disappointing that I would have loved to see more from, and this isn't, I guess below honorable mention, would be one of them cats from Underachievers. I think his name was like Issa Dash or some shit. There's one of them that's like a way better rapper than the other, and I can't remember the name. But anyway, that's it, man. ASAP Rocky, dude. Drake, Playboi Carti. Those are the niggas right now. Those are the niggas, period. Okay, and of course, Lil B. But those are the guys, man. That's your era's like most sort of forward thinking rappers. And in time, people are gonna figure this shit out.